On a freezing night, with snow covering the streets and rooftops like a white blanket, the city was enveloped in an almost magical silence, broken only by the soft sound of falling snowflakes and the occasional noise of cars still venturing onto the slippery roads. Alexandra, wrapped in a thick scarf and a heavy coat, walked back home, feeling the icy wind cut her face and the cold air fill her lungs with each breath. Her thoughts were at work, worried about an elderly patient she had been caring for all week. Will he be okay? She wondered, fervently hoping he would survive. Alexandra was a dedicated nurse, only 29 years old, but with a wealth of experience that earned her admiration and trust from everyone. She cared deeply for her patients, treating them as if they were her own family, which made her an exemplary professional. As she walked, the snow-covered streets reflected the light from the streetlights, creating a picturesque scene. However, her mind was occupied with the warning she had received: due to the impending blizzard, everyone should stay indoors. The storm promised to be intense, and precautions were necessary to ensure everyone's safety. Some doctors and nurses were on extended 3-day shifts at the hospital, but Alexandra had been released after completing her grueling shift for several days in a row. As she walked, her eyes wandered around the city, observing the silent preparation for the approaching storm. It was at that moment that she saw a man lying on the sidewalk, clearly injured. Without hesitation, she approached him and, with her characteristic empathy, decided to help him. She took the man to her home, where she treated his injuries with all the dedication and care that her profession had taught her. She never imagined that this act of kindness would change her life forever. Days later, she would discover that she was pregnant by the man she helped and, as she got to know him better, she would reveal an incredible secret about her past, which would intertwine their lives in an unexpected and profound way. The lights of the houses shone through the snow, creating an almost magical atmosphere. However, the beauty of the night could not dispel the concern Alexandra felt for the old man she had cared for during the week. She hoped that he was comfortable and safe, even though she knew that at that moment there was nothing she could do for him other than hope that he would survive the approaching blizzard. Suddenly, something caught her attention in the middle of the snow. In a dark alley, she saw a young man lying on the cold ground, practically thrown on top of a pile of cardboard. He was all bruised, dirty and ragged. The contrast between the beauty of the snow and the misery of the scene in front of him was shocking. Alexandra stopped, feeling a pang of pain in her heart at the sight of the man's deplorable state. My God, how sad, she thought, as the cold seemed to intensify around him, as if the night itself was becoming even crueler. She knew that she could not simply pass by this human being and ignore his situation. The compassion she felt for her patients extended to everyone she met, and this young man was no exception. The nurse, upon seeing the state of the homeless man, decided to take action. She ran to a nearby cafe and bought a hot coffee and some warm bread. She quickly returned to the alley where he was, her heart heavy with worry. As she approached him again, she noticed that the homeless man seemed a little out of it. "Sir, hey, are you okay?" she called, her voice full of concern. She knelt down beside him, trying to assess the gravity of the situation. He slowly opened his eyes, his gaze lost and confused. "I'm here to help," she said softly, holding out the hot coffee toward him. The young man tried to sit up, groaning in pain, while Alexandra carefully supported him. Determined to do more for him, Alexandra helped him up and took him to her home, where she could better care for his injuries. Along the way, she introduced herself and tried to make him feel a little more at ease, despite the situation. Upon arriving home, she provided him with a hot bath, clean clothes, and began to treat his wounds with all the care and dedication that came naturally to her. While she was taking care of him, Alexandra reflected on how life was full of unexpected surprises. She never imagined that cold, snowy night would lead her to cross paths with that man. The kindness he showed her at that moment was merely a reflection of his generous and compassionate soul. And little did she know that this chance encounter would change their lives forever, revealing secrets from the past and creating deep and unexpected bonds. Get up, young man. "Come with me, I brought you something," she said with determination. The young woman introduced herself and offered him the hot coffee and bread she had bought. The man, shivering from the cold, accepted it gratefully, holding the cup in his nearly frozen hands. She realized she had to do more for him, she couldn't leave him there to die in the blizzard. Determined to help him, Alexandra took him to her apartment. He was a little confused, but clearly relieved to be in a warm place, away from the snow and the relentless cold. Inside the apartment, the temperature was comfortable, a welcome contrast to the harsh cold outside. "Make yourself comfortable, okay? I'll make you some hot soup," she said with a warm smile. While the man took a shower to warm up, Alexandra went to the kitchen and began preparing a comforting meal. The blizzard, which was already beginning to intensify, showed signs of being very heavy. She was relieved to have taken the man home, as he had no chance of surviving on the streets. The storm promised to last several days longer than anyone had predicted, preventing anyone from leaving their homes. As the soup cooked, Alexandra reflected on how lucky she had been to have met this man in time. She wondered about his story and how he had come to be in this situation. When he emerged from the shower, he seemed more refreshed, though still very tired. "Thank you, really," he said, his voice a little stronger. "My name is Herbert," he said, thanking her once again for the unexpected kindness he was receiving. Alexandra smiled at the mention of his name. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Herbert. I hope this soup will help warm you up even more." She served the meal and sat at the table with him, talking about their lives as the snow continued to fall outside, covering the city in a cold white blanket. Herbert began to share a bit of his story, and Alexandra listened intently, feeling a growing connection with this man who, until just a few hours before, had been a complete stranger. Over the next few days, as the storm raged outside, Herbert and Alexandra spent a lot of time together. She cared for his wounds and, little by little, he began to open up more, revealing secrets from a difficult past. The forced coexistence due to the blizzard brought about a mutual understanding and an unexpected friendship, showing that sometimes the most unlikely encounters can change our lives in ways we never imagined. During those days, Alexandra allowed Herbert to stay in her apartment. Now clean, smelling good and with his wounds treated, he seemed like a completely different person. She had cared for him with all the love and attention, and the result was remarkable. Herbert had beautiful green eyes and a charming smile, with perfect teeth, which began to appear more frequently. The two talked daily and had a lot of fun, despite the circumstances. The nurse often found herself wondering how someone as polite and kind as Herbert could have ended up homeless. She confided her problems to him, and he listened attentively, although he did not remember much about his own life, which deeply intrigued her. It was clear that Herbert had the kindness and empathy of a true gentleman. As the days passed, Alexandra began to realize that her heart was growing fonder of Herbert. He was pleasant company and the connection between them was undeniable. One night, actually the last night of the blizzard, while they were talking, they ended up falling asleep together in the same bed, their words turning into whispers until they fell asleep. In that moment, Herbert showed that he had feelings for her, and Alexandra felt safe and happy by his side. However, the worst was yet to come. The next morning, Alexandra woke up and realized that the bed was unmade, but Herbert was gone. Feeling a mixture of confusion and worry, she began to search for him in the apartment, but there was no sign of Herbert anywhere. Devastated, Alexandra sat on the edge of the bed, trying to understand what could have happened. Her heart was heavy, because in such a short time Herbert had become an important part of her life. As she relived the moments they had spent together, questions flooded her mind. Why had he left so suddenly? Was he in danger? Had he remembered something about his past that made him leave? The next few days were difficult for Alexandra. Herbert's absence was a painful void, and she wondered if she would ever see him again. Still, she clung to the hope that he was safe and that perhaps one day their paths would cross again. The blizzard had passed, but the storm in her heart still raged as she tried to move on, keeping alive the memory of the man who had touched her so deeply in such a short time. The space beside her was empty, and the morning chill seemed even more intense. The nurse, now half in love, was exasperated. She was terribly worried about the boy. She searched the entire house, calling out to him. "Herbert, where are you?" But silence was her only answer. She went from room to room, hoping to find him somewhere, but Herbert seemed to have completely disappeared. The following days were spent searching incessantly. Alexandra walked through her neighborhood, searching every alley and corner possible, but found no sign of Herbert. In a moment of desperation, she confided her concern to one of the nurses she trusted most, believing that she would receive some support. However, the response was not what she expected. "Have you gone crazy, girl? Are you falling for a beggar? First of all, how could you bring a man like that into your home? He could have done a lot of horrible things to you," her colleague scolded, making Alexandra feel even more confused and lost. The harsh words increased her feeling of loneliness, as if there was no one who could understand her heart. She had taken Herbert in out of compassion, but the days they spent together made her feel something deeper for him. The nurse tried to carry on with her routine, but Herbert's absence was a constant shadow over her life. She had no idea that things would get even worse. 2 months passed, and Alexandra began to notice changes in her body. Her belly began to grow abnormally, and her menstrual cycle stopped. Worried, she went to the doctor to understand what was happening. It was then that she received the news that would change her life forever: she was pregnant. The discovery of the pregnancy brought mixed emotions. Alexandra wondered how it had happened, remembering the last night with Herbert. In addition to the surprise, came the concern. What would it be like to take care of a baby alone? And Herbert, where was he now? She found herself wondering how he would react when he found out he was going to be a father. The following days were filled with introspection and difficult decisions. Alexandra decided that, regardless of whether she found Herbert or not, she would raise that baby with all the love she could. The nurse knew that the challenges would be many, but she was determined to move forward. As she prepared her life for the baby's arrival, Alexandra couldn't help but hope that somehow Herbert would return to their lives. She continued to search for him, in vain, but each passing day strengthened her commitment to the new life growing inside her. The morning cold might be bitter, but her heart was warmed by the hope and love she felt for the baby in the man who, for a brief moment, had touched her life so profoundly. She was vomiting and feeling nauseous constantly. "It can't be," she thought in disbelief. "Could I be pregnant?" The shock was instantaneous, plunging her into a whirlwind of emotions. To be sure, Alexandra took a pregnancy test, and the result confirmed her worst fear: she was pregnant with the child of that homeless man she had found on the street and who had disappeared. "No, it can't be," she repeated, feeling completely lost. How would she care for this child who would never know his father? And Herbert, how would he never know of the existence of his own son? The responsibility seemed overwhelming, and the weight of uncertainty made each day harder. The news spread quickly through the hospital, thanks to the nurse Alexandra considered a friend. The mockery began. "Alexa is pregnant with a homeless man. The father must have a great gift for when the baby is born," they said, laughing at the situation. Each laugh was like a knife in Alexandra's heart, who felt more and more regret for having been so naive as to take someone into her home. "I'm such a fool. How could I do something like that?" she lamented, trying to find some logic in the situation she found herself in. The weight of the mockery and her own guilt made her increasingly dejected. The weeks passed, and the pregnancy progressed, bringing even more uncertainty and challenges. Alexandra tried hard to continue with her routine, but the loneliness and fear were constant. With each prenatal appointment, the void left by Herbert became more evident. She wondered how he would react if he knew he was going to be a father. Would he look for her? Was he okay? These questions haunted her daily. At the same time, Alexandra began to make plans for the future. She knew she needed to be strong for the sake of the baby. She sought support from single mothers groups and began preparing her apartment for the arrival of the new member of the family. Amidst the changes in her body and the emotional uncertainties, she found moments of joy in imagining life with her son. Despite the difficulties, the nurse decided that she would not let other people's opinions or Herbert's absence prevent her from giving the best for her son. The pregnancy, although unexpected, brought a new perspective on her life and her ability to love and care. Alexandra promised herself that she would do everything in her power to provide a loving and safe home for her baby. As time passed, Alexandra continued to nurture the hope that somehow Herbert would return to their lives. Even without knowing what the future held, she clung to the faith that things would work out for the best. And above all, she prepared herself to face the most transformative challenge of her life, becoming a mother. Every time she ran her hand over her belly, Alexandra felt a mix of fears and hopes. Her mind often wandered to thoughts of the uncertain future, and the weight of her responsibilities seemed to grow with each passing day. However, fate had something unexpected in store for her. One fine afternoon, while she was absorbed in her thoughts, sitting on the couch, she heard a knock on the door. The sound brought her back to reality. With her heart racing, she walked to the door, trying not to get her hopes up. When she opened it, her mouth fell open. Standing in the doorway was Herbert. She froze, as if she had seen a ghost. Her heart raced, and it took her a few seconds to compose herself. What surprised her most was Herbert's transformation. He no longer looked like a homeless man, he was impeccably dressed, with his hair neatly styled and an air of serenity. "I finally found you, Alexandra," he said, almost cheering, his eyes shining with relief. The young nurse, however, was overcome by an avalanche of emotions. Feeling a mixture of anger and sadness, she began to curse him bluntly. "You are an imbecile. How could you abandon me, disappear for more than 2 months and leave me like this?" Her voice shook with emotion as she shouted. "You got me pregnant, Herbert, and then you left." Herbert went pale, speechless, genuinely surprised by the accusation. Her words hung in the air, heavy, as he tried to process what he had just heard. He then explained 2 things that nearly made Alexandra have a heart attack. First, he revealed his true identity. Herbert was not just a homeless person. He said he came from a wealthy family, but he had lost everything due to a series of unfortunate circumstances. During his time missing, he had managed to resolve the issues that had led him to this situation, and now he was back to make amends for the mistakes of the past. Second, he explained that he had not simply disappeared. When he left, it was to seek help and get back on his feet. He had no idea that Alexandra was pregnant and that she was going through so much alone. The revelation shook him deeply, and he expressed his regret and his desire to be there for her and the baby. Alexandra felt a storm of emotions as she listened to Herbert's explanations. Although she was still hurt, part of her wanted to believe him and give this new beginning a chance. The prospect of raising their child together and building a better life seemed possible, even if the wounds of the past were still fresh. In the days that followed, Herbert did everything he could to prove his commitment. He supported Alexandra through all the medical appointments and preparations for the baby's arrival. Little by little, she began to see that he was telling the truth and that his return was not just a coincidence, but a genuine effort to repair the damage done. Over time, Alexandra and Herbert began to rebuild trust and re-establish the connection they had lost. Although the path was not easy, they were both determined to face the challenges together. The pregnancy progressed, bringing a new kind of hope and a future where they could be a united and happy family, despite all the adversities they had faced. At that moment, Herbert said something that made Alexandra freeze. "That night, I couldn't have gotten you pregnant." The young woman froze when she heard those words. "What do you mean?" Confused thoughts invaded her mind. How could she be pregnant with Herbert if they hadn't had sex that night? She really didn't remember them doing anything, but she thought it might have been because they were asleep. Doubt consumed her while Herbert maintained a serious and understanding expression. Herbert assured her that he had not touched her. After all, he said with sincerity in his eyes, if we were to be together one day, I would like it to be on a special occasion. Alexandra fell onto the couch, perplexed, feeling a mixture of relief and confusion. She tried to understand what was happening. How could she explain that she was pregnant? Whose baby was it, anyway? The situation was disconcerting and her mind was spinning in search of answers. While she was lost in her thoughts, Herbert did something that touched her deeply. Even if the child is not mine, if you allow it, I would like to take responsibility. I have fallen in love with you, Alexandra, he confessed, with a sincere expression and a gentle gleam in his eyes. Herbert's words touched Alexandra's heart, revealing a side of him that she had never known before, a gentle and committed side, willing to be by her side, no matter the circumstances. In the days that followed, the couple decided to seek answers together. They went to several doctor's appointments, trying to clarify the situation. During these appointments, Alexandra began to realize how willing Herbert was to support her, demonstrating a genuine commitment. As they dealt with the uncertainty of paternity, their relationship grew stronger. Herbert was present at every stage of the pregnancy, helping with the preparations for the baby's arrival. With each day, Alexandra saw more clearly what a caring and responsible man Herbert was, and her trust in him grew. At the same time, Alexandra kept thinking about how she could have been pregnant. She mentally revisited all the recent events, trying to find some clue. Her initial confusion gave way to a determination to find the truth, and she knew that, no matter what she discovered, she would not be alone. Over time, Alexandra and Herbert built a life together based on honesty and mutual support. They learned to deal with the difficulties and celebrate the small daily victories. The pregnancy progressed, bringing with it hope for a better future. Despite the initial challenges, Herbert's constant presence and love helped Alexandra overcome her fears and insecurities. They were ready to face whatever came their way, united by love and determination to provide a loving home for the baby on the way. The journey would not be easy, but they were both committed to doing the best for each other and for the new life growing in Alexandra. Anxious for answers, they underwent ultrasound scans, but what they discovered was an unbelievable situation. Alexandra was not pregnant. In fact, she was suffering from a tumor called choriocarcinoma, an ovarian tumor that produces HCG, the same hormone that increases during pregnancy. As a result, she was experiencing all the symptoms of pregnancy, a cruel illusion that led her to believe in a new life. The revelation was a devastating shock for the nurse. The diagnosis fell on her like a bucket of cold water. Choriocarcinoma was a malignant tumor, and the word cancer echoed in her mind like a nightmare. Her heart raced, and Alexandra tried to process the news, feeling the weight of reality crashing down on her shoulders. Fear of the unknown invaded her, making her feel vulnerable and scared. Tears welled up in her eyes, but Herbert was by her side, holding her hand tightly, his gaze full of determination and support. "We will face this together. I promise I will take care of all the treatments," he said with conviction, transmitting a strength that calmed her. The assurance in Herbert's words brought a small spark of hope to Alexandra's heart, who felt lost and helpless. Knowing that she would not be alone in this battle gave her new motivation to fight. The next steps included a series of medical appointments, intensive treatments, and a journey of resilience and courage. Alexandra began a chemotherapy regimen, closely monitored by Herbert, who was always there. Each session was a struggle, but Herbert's constant presence made all the difference. He accompanied her to every hospital visit, helped her deal with the side effects, and reminded her daily of her strength and ability to overcome challenges. As they navigated this difficult time, Alexandra and Herbert's bond grew stronger. They talked about the future, shared dreams and plans for when the storm finally passed. Herbert increasingly revealed his protective and caring side, showing Alexandra that despite the adversities, love and mutual support could create a solid foundation to overcome any obstacle. During her treatments, Alexandra also found support in cancer patient groups. Hearing the stories of others who had overcome similar situations gave her hope and courage. Herbert, in turn, sought information and strategies to help Alexandra feel more comfortable and optimistic. The battle against choriocarcinoma was arduous, and there were moments of discouragement and pain. However, Herbert's determination and Alexandra's inner strength did not allow them to give up. Each small victory was celebrated, each advance in treatment was a step closer to recovery. As the months passed, the doctors began to see significant progress. Alexandra responded well to treatment, and the prospect of a cure became increasingly real. The journey was still long, but hope was renewed with each appointment, with each positive piece of news. Finally, after a long and exhausting period of treatment, Alexandra received the news she had been waiting for: the tumor had significantly regressed, and the doctors were optimistic about her full recovery. The joy and relief were immense. Herbert and Alexandra embraced each other, overcome with emotion, feeling that a new phase of their lives was about to begin. This experience, although painful, had strengthened their love and commitment. Together, they had faced what seemed impossible and emerged stronger and more united than ever. From that moment on, they knew they could face any challenge, because they had each other and an unwavering determination to live life to the fullest. Recovery required immense strength and courage, and the man who was faithful to his commitment was always by her side, helping her through each step, offering unconditional support. He proved to be a true partner, a pillar of support in the midst of the storm that was ravaging Alexandra's life. When the young woman began chemotherapy treatments, and later surgery to remove the tumor, Herbert's constant presence became essential. The early diagnosis brought optimism to the doctors, who believed that it would be possible to remove the tumor without serious consequences. This positive outlook gave Alexandra new strength to face the challenges that lay ahead. The chemotherapy sessions were undoubtedly difficult. However, Herbert was present at every appointment, holding her hand and offering words of encouragement. He became an unwavering source of strength, and his presence made all the difference. Meanwhile, the hospital nurses, who had initially mocked the young woman, were shocked to discover that Herbert, the man Alexandra had taken home, was in fact the heir to one of the most renowned shoe stores, a brand they themselves admired and coveted. Herbert's transformation and the revelation of his true identity became the talk of the hospital. Gossip ran rampant, and the nurses, who had previously mocked the young woman, now looked at her with a mixture of surprise and jealousy. Who would have thought that this man, once homeless, was actually a prince charming in disguise? They talked among themselves, trying to come to terms with this unexpected turn of events. Alexandra's kindness and empathy, which led her to help Herbert on that cold night, were rewarded in a way she never imagined. The love that blossomed between them proved to be true and deep, a bond that grew stronger in the face of adversity. They discovered in each other a partner for all times, someone they could trust unconditionally. After months of treatment and care, the day of the surgery arrived, which, thank God, was a success. The recovery brought with it a new perspective on life. With the tumor removed and their health restored, Alexandra and Herbert began to plan their future together. They were determined to build the life they had always dreamed of, overcoming the difficulties they faced. The love that was born amidst difficulties turned into a solid and eternal commitment. Now, they look to the future with hope and joy. And if you liked this story, the next video that is appearing on your screen will certainly move you too. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like it and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. A big kiss and until the next exciting story.